Hey everyone. Today I'm joined by Ruth Beadle. Ruth was most recently Global Head of Supply Chain at Sanofi and is now an advisor and consultant in the supply chain space and is Supply Chain Domain Consultant with Ailey Labs. Ruth, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Sam. Delighted to be here.
Really appreciate you taking the time. I guess a good place to start. Could you just tell me a little bit about yourself and your career journey so far?
I can, and I can, it could take the whole podcast because it's not a straightforward journey, right? I always wanted to be an accountant. That's what was my aspiration. So when I went to university, that was the path I took, and I decided I did not want to become an accountant. And I was intrigued by international business and economics. So I was gifted with a great starting position in the UK as a graduate trainee for Bass Brewers and in the logistics space, as it was at the time, and gave me great foundations in line management, and how the whole enterprise ticked. And then they merged logistics and production into what they call their supply chain. So I got great experience there, and then I moved to a sister company, which was a soft drinks company, again using my foundation of logistics, line management, but moved quickly into the customer engagement space and technical space. And then we had our first child, and I decided it was time to move back to Ireland, where I'm from. And that gave me my first really industry change. So I moved to luxury, and again, I started in the same supply chain space, customer service, logistics, and moved into business process reengineering, ERP solutions, deploying those. And I ended up working for the CEO on strategic projects. So that was cool. But Ireland has a huge pharma industry, right? I think the statistic is 24 out of the top 25 companies are in Ireland. So it was a space I wanted to get into. So I actually took a step back and moved in as planning manager into a small biotech company locally here. And that was then acquired by Sanofi. And the rest is history. I moved up, I became the supply chain head, moved again onto ERP implementations globally. Then I went into quality actually for a period, became a manufacturing site head, then became a group of sites running a business of the manufacturing side. So one was in the general medicine business, another one was in the specialty care business. And then I got my dream job, right? The head of global supply chain. And I did that for the last 3 years before I left. So I was with Sanofi for about 18 years. So quite a wide career covering many functions, I guess. And you couldn't design it, right? It wasn't planned. Opportunities just emerged along the way.
Me too. No, thank you. And can you tell me, sort of earlier in your career,
Hmm.
what was some of the most important advice that you personally were given by your own mentors?
Um, Two standout pieces of advice. One very early, which was given to me, was about it was in line management, right? And it was don't mess with people's time and don't mess with people's money, and you'll be okay, right? You can kind of do it, not whatever else you want, but if you really respect people essentially, and I mean most people go to work, and to earn money for their families, etc. And that was something I carried with me, right? So it's how you like to be treated, right? It's how I like to be treated. So that was one that stands out, and probably in the early maybe 2010, somebody said something different to me. I was a bit further on. It was probably my first senior leadership role, and my boss at the time said, you ask great questions, but you ask too many of them, right? So ask fewer, but questions with impact. And that was a very good piece of advice. Because sometimes when you keep asking questions, right, you keep asking questions,
Yeah.
I think you really lose what's truly the priority, or what is the focus. So I think both of those two things would have been standout moments for me that I've carried with me.
No, I think that's great advice. I think people get quite caught up in the day to day and don't take that step back and think, actually,
Mm.
when I'm a leader, what do the people underneath me value the most, and what can I do and what shouldn't I do in terms of leadership? And I think that's a really good way of looking at it. Ruth, one thing I think that is quite unique to your experience is that you have moved between industries there. And we've spoken on this sort of briefly before, but I am really curious. The move across from brewing and beverage into luxury into pharma, what do you feel you took with you as you moved across those industries?
Well, I mean, my core skills, if I were to say, I learned them pretty early on, right? So I love leading teams. I love, the not being tied at a desk fully, being out and about, working with people closely. So, and that came with me everywhere I went. Also, I'm pretty curious, and I've always been interested in technology, right? And it's changed as it's gone along, right? So, from green screens in AS400 through to kind of GUI screens with, SAP, et cetera, to APO, advanced planning systems, and now, of course, into AI and agentic AI. And that's something that is, I was able to move. I mean, you need to obviously understand, how the whole supply chain functions, right? Plan, source, deliver, etc. But I think the things that made it easier for me to transfer was I had transferable skills.
Yeah.
And when I moved jobs, if you saw, I always moved, as I mentioned, right? I always moved with into areas where, and some of them involved, as I said, a little step back, but where I could kind of leverage those and then add more. And the move, so that would be, the line management. As I said, ERP was big early in my career at the time, right? So those kind of things. And then you pick up other skills, right, which are specific maybe to the industry. The move from, let's call it FMCG, the drinks industry, to luxury wasn't so difficult. Maybe it was because I was younger, I don't know. The move to pharma was more difficult. And sometimes I kind of reflected as to why would that be, right? Because pharma supply chains in the day, right, versus FMCG supply chains, they'd been much further behind, right? Less advanced, different focus, more materials management, maybe, I would say, rather than actually, orchestrating the supply chain, which it is now moved to. Okay, so it's absolutely transformed over the period. But I think it was harder to move because of where it was positioned within the organization, and not physically or hierarchically, but the impact it could have. And also there's a lot of nuances in pharma, right? Like, a lot of regulations, more, you think, well, food have regulations, okay? But there's an awful lot more regulations. So there are transferable skills, and my advice to somebody who would be moving, say, from, Procter and Gamble or, some CPG company, right, into pharma, which I would advise, right? Because I think you can transfer, is whilst you may know the supply chain and the fundamentals of supply chain, be humble, right? Because you actually have to learn and have a higher appreciation, I would say, for the manufacturing process. And that's what helped me there, because I was exposed to those things, to the quality process, and you kind of need to invest in moving functions, etc., to get a greater appreciation. So it can be done. I think it was a harder move for me anyway.
Yeah. It's a brilliant perspective because, openly a lot of people do ask me about that. I have a large network in FMCG, but I also have clients in the pharma space, and it's a move a lot of people are interested in. It's a move a lot fewer people actually get the opportunity to make. And I think a part of that is, even though there are transferable skills, there's parts that you highlighted there in terms of the appreciation of the differences, the openness to saying, actually, I don't know this, but I can learn it. and being willing to maybe take even a small step back to say, I need to learn all of these parts.
Yeah.
So this part I have to be well ahead in to be able to take that step. And yeah, it's quite a unique perspective.
I think people can move, right? And I think it's good for the pharma industry that people do move, right? But just to have that impact, to actually bring what you can bring, you need to take that time. Yeah.
100%. No, brilliant perspective. I appreciate that. Thank you. Look, we know supply chains have changed a lot in the past 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. What do you think are some of the most important skills that people should be looking to develop in the coming years as the supply chain keeps on changing?
Yeah. I mean, I think you can't beat experience, first of all. Okay. So I would encourage, particularly younger people, if they're listening to this, or younger people in their career, I would encourage them to go broad early.
Yeah.
Right? So, like I was lucky enough, I had these opportunities, right? And that just came my way. I got huge exposure across different functions, across an enterprise, across multiple enterprises in different industries. We've just chatted about it, right? So, and I think over time that really stands to you, right? Now, you may not like it, right? There were some roles or some functions I preferred more than others, right?
Yeah.
But I think you learn something every time, okay? And so I think that's critical. So I'd say go broad. I think in today's world, a lot of it's about data-driven decision making.
Yeah.
So I heard something recently. Somebody said people used to carry big briefcases because they had a lot of data, but actually information gives you insights, right? So when you're looking at data, when you're looking at things, are you really getting the decisions that are required or the insights that are needed and listen to? And now the heavy lifting is done by agentic AI or by a lot of these systems that we have in place. And can you actually leverage the benefit of that? So it's not only about being tech savvy anymore, right? Which I think you need to be. I mean, do you need to code? I don't think so. Do you need to understand the power of it? I do think so. Okay. But it's really about leveraging it. So can you actually leverage that? So that would be a very important skill that I would encourage people to develop. And then I think particularly in this world now, and I am a firm believer that AI is here to stay, but so are humans, right?
Yeah.
It's the ability to lead people through that change. So it's the softer skills.
Yeah.
Okay. So can you firstly, are you resilient enough to lead yourself through it? Then can you lead other people through it? And can you collaborate with it? Can you collaborate with partners, right? Who you work with? So those softer skills, I think, are probably more important now than ever before.
Yeah.
And just don't get hung up on getting, I don't know, an MBA in AI or something, right? I don't know, do they even do that?
Yeah.
But know enough to ask powerful questions. Going back to my mentor's advice, right? But really, engaging with people on that whole change and transformation is going to be vital.
Yeah, it's a really, really good answer and quite an important answer, I think, because a lot of people nowadays say to me, should I take this course? Should I do this training program? There's a lot out there, naturally, because I don't doubt there's great content within them, but people get so caught up in the hype of what's coming and I've got to be in the front of this, they forget about the other part, which is, okay, you can understand how the systems work. Can you actually articulate that through to your team? Can you make sure that they're brought along on that journey? Are your soft skills in that piece? And I think there's a lot of noise about all the new latest and greatest training courses and things you can do to get in front of AI. But you can't just get in front of AI. You have to do everything else that comes within that, which is...
Yeah, I think it's important. And we were lucky in Sanofi, and we were educated, right? So everybody was, educated on AI. And, really, the one thing that I remember very much from the course is, what is the problem you're trying to solve? Okay?
Yes.
So it's not about, can you do the coding yourself or
Yeah,
whatever. It's about, it's particularly the more senior you are in the organization, I think. It's around how you can use it, what is the impact it's going to have, what are you trying to use it for, and therefore it really simplifies what is the solution you really need, right?
yeah,
And stops this mass of pilots and everything else that keep turning because you know what you want to use it. But I think leading through that and encouraging others to walk forward, I suppose, step into it, is going to be really key. And the more senior you go in the organization, I think the higher those softer skills are needed. Can you collaborate? Can you
yeah,
influence? Um, can you look at the enterprise as a whole? So, supply chain is a great training ground, I think, for a lot of C-suite jobs, even beyond supply chain. But what really, can you articulate those
yeah.
impacts, and can you influence your peers to really make a difference?
No, absolutely. And on the subject of sort of AI and changing things, I
Hmm.
know we spoke about a sort of month or so ago when you're now working in that space as
Hmm.
an advisor. What
Hmm.
sort of things are you doing at the moment in that space?
I am excited by it because I'm
Yeah,
excited about and this, what I try and do is do two things, right? I try and bring real use cases to the clever people who can create solutions for them, right? So, you know, I'll just say one of them. Today we have like an IBP cycle in supply chain, which is really powerful. I'm a big believer running monthly. Is that suitable for everybody, right? Do people want a faster solution? And I'd say the answer to that is absolutely they need a faster solution, right? In some businesses, then a monthly cycle is too late, right? So then you have all these offline meetings about, well, what about this and what about that? So I think the world is speeding up, but the quality of information shouldn't disimprove. So I try and work with the clever people to bring real experience
yeah,
about what a solution could look like. Um, and then if I'm lucky enough, I try and work with other people, clients, around driving business impact, right?
yeah,
So what is truly the value realization? How do you engage people? Um, Exciting an organization, because I think everybody wants to use AI. It's knowing where to really make a difference in your business. So
yeah.
I try and share my experience with people along that, and I really enjoy it. I've got to say, 'cause I'm learning something as well.
Yeah. No, it's a really interesting space to be within. If you were to give some advice to someone who is graduating university or pivoting into supply chain for the first time, they're starting out their career, what would that advice be?
Mm. I would say take every chance that's offered to you, right? That would be the right. So you might be offered a job somewhere. Take it. It mightn't suit you, your lifestyle today, but it might be, I'm making it up now, 6 months secondment to, Amsterdam or something, right? Take it, go it. You will learn something, you will build your career. So I think throw yourself in
Yeah,
early. As I said, I would go broad, right? As much as you can. So try not to. And I think a lot of people are tempted to go up the ladder quickly.
yeah,
But in supply chain, you could spend some time in finance. You could spend some time in manufacturing. They're all linked, right? You could spend some time in you know, IT, or that kind of stuff. And um, I think that's really important. I can't emphasize it enough. I think the straight line way up won't help you in the future. The other thing I also think is really important, and a lot of us, until we only get it when we get older, know your value.
mm,
you know, really back yourself, right? So I think it probably takes till you get 50, till you should you really, think, my goodness. But actually, when you're 20, You have so many great things going for you, you know, you have energy, you have positivity, you have everything. And believe in yourself, believe in your value and
Yeah.
back yourself.
No, I think it's firstly on the breadth piece. It's quite hard, I think, for some people in the organisation to see that I'm in quite a privileged position where my job is to look at the market. And I've been on very, very senior searches where the requirement is, yes, we need a supply chain leader, but they have to have come from manufacturing, and we'd love them to have a commercial background. And if they've spent a bit of time here, and that breadth piece is so important. And I think some people get so caught up in bigger title, bigger responsibility, bigger remit, they go as quickly as they can in a single path,
Yeah.
without taking the time to meander across some of these other areas. And at a point that then starts to become a challenge. And then that is obviously more challenging once you're a senior director or a vice president to then pivot into a new space. So no, I think that's brilliant advice. And
I
then
would
on
add one more thing. Have fun, right?
yes.
Have fun, enjoy
Yeah.
it. Right? You know, you may live to work or work to live. It depends on your perspective. But in any case, have fun, love what you do,
Yeah.
right? Enjoy it, right? Or and if it's not, for example, the specific role that you're loving, love the company, love the culture, love the team, whatever it is, but have fun. It's really important because that's what, really takes you through the tougher times. Yeah.
Also, I think it makes you more successful because not only does it take you through tough times and it helps you with just enjoying life, but once you have that passion for what you do, you want to do more of it. You want to do it at a higher level. You want to find out new things. And yeah, I find most of the people I interview, if not all of them at a senior level, they love what they do. And that's how they've got to that point. On the other side of things, what advice would you give to someone who is aspiring to reach that senior leadership, global head? They're on their way there, they're on that journey. What would your top advice be to someone who's one step away from
that? Maybe a couple of things. One is do a good job in your current role, right? Because sometimes people are so keen to get to the next role that they slip in what they're doing. Okay, so I think for any move up, you've got to be good at what you do or deliver what's on your chain, and don't move rapidly. I think a minimum of 3 years is needed. The more senior you get, could be 4 years, right? But anyway, but I think that, as I said, the more senior you go, you're actually a business leader. Okay.
Yeah.
So what got you there isn't going to take you into the future. Okay. So I would say the things to work on are, your knowledge of the enterprise, stand in other functions' shoes, even if you're physically not in them. But your network, your internal network, your collaboration cross-functionally, because to get a C-suite job, it won't only be the person who you work for will appoint you, it'll be multiple people will appoint you, right? So how well are you known in the company? And known for delivery, but also actually known as a person. So I think networking internally, networking externally also. They would be kind of the things over and beyond what I've said. I also think don't play it safe. Okay. Be bold. Be bold, right? So, I don't know. Today it's AI. I don't know what the next move will be. I'm a great believer, by the way, in sustainability. And as we see in this very hot climate at the moment, I think there's more we can do really to make a difference. And whilst we all talk about climate change and challenges, I think really there could be more drastic steps taken or changes made about how we operate. So I think, don't be afraid, right, to speak your mind and be bold rather than just conform.
No, great advice. Thank you. I think you've given a lot of sort of good advice, a good amount that people should go and take away and consider. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Well, thank you, Sam. Take care.